Welcome to the Longest Turn Board Gaming Podcast. This is episode 22, Cthulhu Death May Die. My name is Tyler.
Hello, this is Kevin.
This is Tyson.
In this episode, we're going to do a feature review of Cthulhu Death May Die. We're also going to talk about some horror-themed games or Halloween-related games in this episode, as we've now entered the month of Halloween. Are you guys excited?
I'm excited.
Do you know what you're going to be for Halloween?
No. Do you?
I'm boycotting Halloween because the last 2 years I dressed up as Date Night Hopper 1 year. I even shaved my beard, so I had the mustache. It was amazing.
It looked good. It did look good.
And then the other year I dressed up as Belschnickel. Is that what it's called?
Dwight's costume.
Yeah, Dwight from The Office. I dressed up as Belschnickel. Nobody knew either year what I was supposed to be. So I'm boycotting Halloween this year. Shelley wants
Liar.
me to be...
You'll be something.
Yeah, I know, because it's Shelley's favorite
That's in
holiday. That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Hey, it's been a long night.
Yeah, it has.
You joked about how Christmas music after November was in your marriage vows. I think one more likely...
October.
Oh, after October. I think one of the more likely vows would have been dressing up for Halloween or participating in the Halloween spirit.
That's true. Shelley wants to maybe do a Bluey themed costume. Me as the
Bluey
dad
is amazing.
Yeah, Bluey is an awesome Australian cartoon if you haven't watched it.
It actually is really good.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Sometimes we watch it after we put Kate into bed. It is awesome. I wore a Bluey shirt that I got for Father's Day yesterday to work.
This is the second time like this week that I've heard that about Bluey, and I've never watched Bluey, and I've got 3 young boys, so...
You got to check it out.
I think I need to watch it.
Talking about Disney Plus.
Yeah, it's a great one. Talking about costumes, I was reminded I was a board game 1 year.
You were?
Yeah.
Which board game?
Ubongo.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Did you guys play that one? And it was actually playable. So we cut out we made pieces, and that was probably my most creative costume to date.
Yeah.
I'm not usually a big Halloween costume person, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not.
I was a board game.
I do it to indulge my wife. Looking back to our last episode of games that should be movies, I was really digging the Cthulhu Santa idea. I think that would be an awesome costume.
That would be a cool costume.
That would be yet another one.
Logan,
but people would not know what you are.
Yeah, right?
Logan last year was a Cthulhu cultist.
He was.
Right?
He was.
Logan was a cultist?
Yes. Yeah. And he got the same response that
I knew what
right?
Logan was.
Yeah.
I mentioned that, but yeah.
That's awesome.
That's funny.
Yeah, 1 year he was like a zombie hunter cowboy or something. I don't know. Yeah. He comes
creative.
Up with some creative ones.
Yeah,
My kids are
good.
really into pirates right now, so we're probably going to be pirate family. So,
I mean, we get a steady diet of princesses and, that type of thing in my house. I have 3 girls, so, a little less on the blood and a little more on the cutesy at my house, so which is great.
But now that you said it, board game Ubongo, I love that idea. Now I want to look at all my games and find a costume.
I wonder where that costume is. I got to break that thing out again. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
I like it.
Speaking of board games, why don't we talk a little bit about board games since that's the podcast? So let's talk about what we've been playing lately.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
So a game I've been playing lately, and this is a Halloween-themed game for sure, is called Monsters on Board. Monsters on Board is a game that was from Final Frontier Games, who made Coloma and Merchant's Cove and those games. And it's designed by Alexander Mishik, Ivo Neskovic, and Somoli Petreski. And I'm sorry if I ruined those names, but this is a game in which think of Scary Sagrada is kind of how I would describe this. It's a dice drafting game in which everybody is drafting dice and have their own player board in which they want to align dice. However, the theme side of this is that you have this horde of monsters that are kind of the BGG description makes it sound like it's almost like a Monsters Inc. style, where they get their power and their energy from scaring people. So they're running out of their spook juice is what it's called. And you're trying to go get more spook juice. And to do so, you have to send your monsters down to the village. So on your player board.
What does one do with spook juice?
I could not tell you because I didn't even understand that was the theme of the game while I was playing the game.
Oh, so the theme is really tied to the mechanics.
Yeah, very much not so.
Oh, okay.
At least I didn't feel that way. But it has a bunch of like minis and a bunch of like I played a copy that was like the deluxeified super all-in version, which has every piece is like some sort of miniature. But essentially, you're taking these monsters and they're going down to a village and trying to scare up and get spook juice. And they have what are called fear mobiles as well, which are these 3D pieces that you construct and put together to make different cars. And basically, you roll your dice and put them in the fear mobiles. And then it's this dice drafting thing. Every turn, you take a die from a fear mobile, pass it to the next player, and then they pass their fear mobile to you until all the dice are selected. Every round, you will then allocate these dice to do different things. And they'll have effects when you place them in certain spots, and they'll also allow you to increase your different stats or move your monsters or do different things. Every die face has multiple actions on it, so you're getting to do multiple things when you're selecting these dice. And basically, you're just trying to get as many points as you can. You can get points from moving your monsters along the track and getting them all the way to the village. You can get points from having certain patterns worked up. Each player gets a personal objective card that has a specific pattern you're working for. Think role player, Sagrada type of cards. Or you also have like different scoring cards that you can go and I can't even remember what it's called, but it's like a market type of thing where you can go recruit new monsters and objectives and points and like it's just kind of a point salad-y kind of experience. And you're getting dice, allocating them in specific patterns, moving your monsters on the board and doing a lot of different things. It's kind of this hodgepodge of mechanics that works. And I actually enjoyed my experience with it, but it was very abstract feeling. My biggest complaint about the game, though, is that I felt like it was overproduced. Like there was so much like bits and pieces.
Kickstarter.
Yeah, it was a Kickstarter, and there was like the 3D fear mobiles, the pieces sometimes were too big. Like some of the minis were too big to like fit side by side when they were at certain locations together, and there was it just felt a little overproduced. Honestly, I would like a less
you just want to push some cubes.
Yeah, I want to push some cubes along a track, and that would have been fine with me because the meat of it is that abstract puzzle, just like if you're playing Sagrada or Role Player, where you're trying to match up specific symbols and specific colors and different rows and things like that. And it does have a good kind of cascading combo effect of when you do one thing, it'll give you more of something else. And I really enjoyed that. So overall, I would play this game again, but I'm not like itching to like seek it out. Part of that is because with all those pieces, it's a lot of setup and it's a little intimidating at first, but it's far simpler in its execution than what it presents itself as. But yeah, the person, Steve, who I played it with, he had everything. So like he bought every type of upgrade you could for it. And I would go with whatever lesser version of it and be just completely content with that.
Interesting. I don't know if I understand the argument of overproduced. I like cool bits and pieces, in games. If things don't fit, then I completely understand that. But I like cool upgraded stuff.
I do too.
And I'm looking at the dice. I'm like, I love custom dice. And those dice look awesome.
The dice are very cool, and those are standard, I think, across all the versions of it. But like, there are just like these totems and the stone totems that are
It messes with the functionality.
Yeah, like it was
that I have a problem with.
It was a little bit
messes
more
with the functionality of the game.
Yeah.
Right?
things
Like
couldn't fit on
Praga.
pieces just the way that they should. Like it felt overcrowded a little bit, and honestly, like. The art is by the Miko, and I like the Miko's art in a lot of things, but the graphic design on that board, it felt like there were a lot of symbols and a lot of things going on that with the overproduced pieces or a lot of extra bits in it just kind of made it even more overwhelming, and it made it harder for me to kind of get immediately into the game where I don't think it needed to be as difficult.
So I will say, those Final Frontier games, right?
Correct.
So I backed a couple of their earlier Kickstarters. They did Coloma and Merchant's Cove, which I didn't back. I think Ben has them, but I backed Cavern Tavern, and this was back when I was just like, ooh, there's a Kickstarter. Ooh, there's another Kickstarter. And I was just backing like crazy. But I backed Cavern Tavern and Rise to Nobility. And I will say they do a lot of nice like linen finishes, and just they kind of go all out with their stretch goals. And there is good quality components there. And they do a nice job with their Kickstarters.
They do. Like I really, both Merchant's Cove and Coloma that I've played of theirs, I really liked the production of those. I thought they did a good job at having upgraded bits and being really nice all around. This one was just a little bit too much for me, but the gameplay itself I enjoyed.
Nice.
I've got a joke for you guys. How many ears does Spock have? He's got the left ear, the right ear, and the final front ear.
Wait. Is this
Halloween
Yeah,
related?
no, is this a...
It's not, but
I was gonna say, is this a
Final
Star Trek?
Frontier games, right?
I
See,
got
there's a tie in there.
Oh
There's a
my
tie in.
I just thought you were telling some random joke, but no, I get it now.
Yeah,
Speaking of bacon,
yeah.
I liked it.
Okay, good.
So yeah, that was
You've been saving that one for a while, haven't you?
No, I've heard the joke before, and it just popped into my head. You know?
So yeah, that was Monsters on Board.
So I'm going to talk about a game that we have referenced on the podcast before, and it is definitely a Halloween themed game. Not a whole lot of theme to it, but this is Skull. So Skull is a bluffing game. The way that it works is you have 4, I'm going to call them coasters because they look exactly like coasters. And these coasters have either a flower on the back or they have a skull. Everybody has the same setup, right? The art's different, but everybody has 3 flowers and 1 skull. So on your turn, you will lay face down one of your coasters. And if it is your turn, you have a choice. You either bid for how many coasters you think you can flip over before flipping over a skull, or you can place another coaster on top of the one that you have placed already. If you place another coaster, it goes to the person to the left. They have the same choice. They can either bid for how many coasters they can flip over, or they put another one on top. So it goes around until somebody says, okay, I think I can flip over 4, for example. Then the person next to them has the choice. Either they can outbid or they can pass. And it goes around until everybody passes except for one person. And then they have to flip over their skulls first, or their coasters first. Hopefully they didn't play a skull, because as soon as you flip, then
Immediately lose.
Immediately lose. And I've done that before. I think we've all done that. And then you go around and you randomly flip over the top coaster on somebody's stack. You don't have to flip over all of their coasters. You can just randomly say, okay, Tyson, I'm flipping over yours. Tyler, I'm flipping over yours too. And as soon as you flip over a skull, you're dead. If you meet your bid, if you say 5 and you flip over 5, then you get to flip over your little mat. If you outlast everybody else, or if you win twice, then you are the winner of Skull. So this is probably my favorite bluffing game. There's another game we've talked about a lot, Cockroach Poker. It's maybe 1 and 2 there. I go back and forth. They're both fantastic games. I just love getting in people's heads and trying to figure out what they're playing. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong, but you can get on a roll where you guess, right.
Yeah.
And it's just awesome when you do.
I love how simple this game is. The art on the coasters is really cool. It's like candy skulls.
Yep.
Right? One of them is like a bearded Viking. That one's my favorite one, I think.
Yep.
That one's awesome. No, it's such a fun game. Really good. It's a great game. It's lightweight. It's a great way to start off a big game night. It goes up to 6 players, or to finish a game night after you play something a little more meaty.
Yep.
I think this is the definition of like a beer and pretzels kind of a game.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And I think like if you took this one to like a pub or a bar or whatever, and we're sitting down eating and whatever, if those coasters are out, I could actually see somebody accidentally using them as a coaster and doing it. So you'd have to be careful about that. But no, this is a game that you guys introduced me to. I'd never played it before, and I think the first was at one of our cabin cons. We played this, and that was my first experience with it. And I love bluffing games, and this is like a pure bluffing game, and it does it really well. And correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, but you're supposed to play them all random, right?
Oh my gosh.
I think
You totally had to bring that up. Yeah, Tyler
I
loves to play
wasn't
blind. He
going to bring
loves
it
to
up
play
because
blind.
we've talked about it before.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to pretend like I'm playing blind.
You played blind
just to get under your skin.
But
You played blind before.
That's
Oh,
part
it's
of
the meta. It's the
strategy,
meta.
though, like that you
But
can
I
put
did
into
say-
the game, like which I like, is that you're really just trying to mess with players and make sure
Right.
that they
That
don't
is the
know what you're
whole-
doing.
I
and
did-
it does it really well.
I
with
did
that.
say on a previous episode, we played this with some friends. We played it the real way, and then we agreed to all play blind, and it was actually a blast. It was hilarious. We were laughing like crazy.
If you all agree to play blind.
If you all agree to play it blind.
I would
And that
agree
was
with
after a few regular plays, so we had already enjoyed the meat of the game, or the bones of the game.
the bones of the game.
I see what you did there. That was kind of ghoulish of you.
Okay. So that is Skull.
All right, so a game that I am going to talk about, and we played recently at a game night, is called Witch's Brew. And if that doesn't say Halloween to you, I don't know what does. So in this game, players are trying to collect ingredients so that they can brew potions and score the most victory points at the end of the game. Really simple game. Everybody has the same deck of cards, and each round, each player secretly picks 5 cards from those same deck of cards. Some of them get you resources. Some of them allow you to do the brew potion action. Some of them manipulate money or exchange resources for money and vice versa. There's a couple unique ones. One where the begging monk, if you play that card, everybody has to contribute a coin to purchase a victory point card.
If they already have a certain amount.
If they have a certain amount. So it's like 1/3 of their money. And then there's another card that is similar, but it's for ingredients. So you play it and they have to, everybody else has to contribute 1/4 of their ingredients towards a different stack of point cards. So basically, you're trying to brew the most potions, collect the most points, but you select 5 cards secretly each round from your hand. And everybody else does the same. And once everybody else has selected their cards, whoever's going first plays their first card. And there's 2 options on the card, but the person leading with the card says, I am the snake hunter, and he's the guy that produces the green ingredient. And then it goes around the table, and if you either say pass, if you don't have that card in your 5 cards that you selected, or you play it, and then you have a choice. You can say, you're the snake hunter, or you can say, so be it. If you say you're the snake hunter, or I am the snake hunter, then the person who initially played it gets no reward. If you say so be it, then they get a lesser reward, and either way, it continues all the way around the table, and everybody has a chance to play that card if they have it in their hand. whoever the last person is that says, I am the snake hunter in this example, they get the full reward. Anybody that said so be it gets a lesser reward. So you're looking at people's resources and what they have available and the spells or the potions that are available to brew, trying to figure out which hand of cards to select. Each round, you can select the same 5 cards if you want, or 5 completely different cards. And basically, one round consists of everybody playing all of their cards. Really fun game. Kevin introduced me to this game years ago. Witch's Brew came out in, it's out of print. It came out in 2008. It was published in the States by Rio Grande Games. It's out of print. However, the same mechanics with the cards was re-implemented with Broom Service. Broom Service is still available, but that Broom Service takes that same card play, but then also introduce a board with some area control. I've played that. I have it. I know some people enjoy that more than Witch's Brew. For me, I like Witch's Brew the most. It's just a fun game. It's also a great game to play. It's lightweight, 45, 50 minutes, 3 to 5 players. I really enjoy it. I've played over 20 times. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love that decision when, somebody says, I am the snake hunter. You're maybe second, and you're looking at everybody's resources, like you said, and you're like, okay, what are the chances that they have that card in their hand? Do I take a chance and say I am the snake hunter and potentially not get anything, or do I go for the lesser benefit because I know I'm going to get something? That decision is just so much fun.
Well,
and when you get it right, it's great.
Right, and there's times where you select your 5 cards and you feel really good about them and you get absolutely nothing out of the round.
Yep.
And then there's times where every card works perfectly. You get amazing stuff, and it just all falls together. Every once in a while, there's a chaos type player at the table who doesn't know what they're doing, or just, plays kind of like the AI chaos type player where they just
why did you play that?
Do random stuff like, why are you playing the snake hunter? You have 10 green ingredients already. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Just a really fun game, really quick. Yeah, trying to read what the other players are doing, trying to pick the cards that will give you the best results each round.
This was my first time playing it. The last time you played it at this most recent game night that we had, and I had never played it before, but that mechanic, exactly what you guys are saying, that decision space that you're making in your head as you're selecting the cards is really rewarding, because you're similar to what you were talking about, Kevin, with Skull, and you're trying to understand what the other players are going to do so that you can make sure that what you're selecting is going to be most beneficial. Sometimes you do want to select a card that somebody else has because you are going before or after them, and sometimes you don't. And like, turn order is a big deal. That selection process is a big deal. For being such a compact game of cards, it has a lot of interesting decision spaces. It reminds me a little bit of, and it should probably be opposite, but I played Coloma first. It reminds me of Coloma, that action selection wheel, where if you pick the same thing as somebody else, there's an impact there that you may or may not want. And I love when games do that and make it so that you're trying to get a single thing, but if somebody else tries to go for that same thing, your reward is significantly lessened or removed, right? Yeah. And it creates really interesting decisions, and I really liked that about this game.
So in this game, you do not want to go first, right?
Right.
Worst spot.
and when you win the I am the whatever, that means the next card, you're playing the next card first. My favorite is when you exhaust all of your cards and you're the whatever, you played last, and then you're out of cards, and so the next person at the table has to go first. And it's like, booyah!
Yeah,
yep.
I don't know.
They didn't do anything to deserve the first position, but they get it even without having
get stuck with it. Yeah,
I love when you pick different than everybody else does. Everybody else is out of cards, and you're just last.
Yeah,
and you play your cards and just get everything that you play.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's cool too.
Yeah.
It's a great game. Sorry, we're talking about a game that's out of print. That's awesome. So if you could track down a copy, go track one down.
Yeah, if you can get Broom Service, I mean, it really has kind of the same card play. And I think Broom Service is a good game. This is one of those things where I played Witch's Brew first, and I think I just like Witch's Brew more.
I'm the same.
Partially because of that fact.
I agree.
That was Witch's Brew by Andreas Pelikan.
So the next game I wanted to talk about is a game that has a little bit of controversy surrounding it. In that this was a game that came out in 2018 and got enough public limelight that it ended up on like a Judge Judy style of the People's Court, I think, or something like that.
The game did?
The publishers of this game, Golden Bell Studios. This game is Unbroken, and there's a lot of really negative thoughts around this game for a lot of people because basically, as I understand it, the publisher basically held their game hostage for people who were making negative comments on the Kickstarter page.
Wow.
And we're doing a lot of like, if you made a negative comment, you didn't get it. I heard people were getting their game fulfilled even like last year or like 2020, 2021 after a majority of people were doing it. So there's a lot of like negative stuff about this, which is too bad because the designer, Artem Safarov, did a really good job with this. And he was kind of in an unfortunate situation, I think. But Unbroken, what it is, and I remember seeing this on Kickstarter and it being really the first pure solo game that I'd ever seen. This is a one-player only game. And essentially what it is that you are trying to survive in the dark. You find yourself in a cave and you have to find your way out. You're trapped in this like cavern and trying to get out of it. You're injured. You're trying to gather food. You're trying to fight monsters. You're trying to get out of it. There are 4 monsters that you will have to fight throughout this process. And depending on your game, that'll be different every single time you play. And you're trying to get through these 4 stages. They're basically like your boss points. But up until that point, you're exploring these caverns to find resources and build weapons or forage for food or do different things, and going through this cavern until you feel ready or you run out of time and are ambushed. So essentially what the game is, it's this card play game with these resource trackers. Each time you play, you have these 2 resource boards that have a number of different resources on them. I think you have like cunning and a knife and wood and food and like gold. And then you also have what's called effort. And effort is basically how much energy you have and how much strength you have to do stuff. And so you're spending these resources to craft new things and do different things. And it's this kind of adventure style game with this horror take on it because there's all these different types of monsters that pop out and you're essentially trying to survive. I've played this game 4 or 5 times now, and it plays in, I'd say, about 30, 45 minutes, depending on how you play, maybe longer. I don't think I've actually won this game yet. I've played, I think I've lost every time, and I really enjoy the experience, but I feel like every time I've lost, it's kind of been an anticlimactic kind of loss. Like it just like, oh, that didn't work out. Like the last time I played, for example, I was fighting a troll in like this. It was the final boss that I had to fight, and I was at the 4th level. And if I had defeated the troll, I would win. And I had a mallet, and I had armor that I had collected from a goblin or something that I had killed, and I was wearing armor, and I had all this stuff that was like really, I was prepared and ready, and I had a bunch of effort energy that I could spend, but it required me to spend a certain amount of energy to swing my hammer, and it had 13 health, which is a lot in this game, and I ended up getting it down to 1 health, and outright ran out of effort. Like I had no more effort to spend, and it was just
You're
like
exhausted.
You couldn't pick up your
right, like
mallet,
but
or
like
whatever.
it was basically bleeding there on the ground, and I feel like if I had kicked it in the face once or whatever, you
were just exhausted.
You could have
laying there.
fallen on top of him. And
and I was just like, well, that was annoying because I didn't get the opportunity. Like I did everything right, and like I had all the stuff. I was prepared. I had food.
Could you have mulliganed it a little?
So I tried to look to see if I could do that, and there was no way that I could get around it. That like I couldn't find a way that like would make sense that wasn't outright cheating. And I was like, I'm not gonna do that. So I lost, and it just was. I like the game a lot, and I like the experience. I ended up, my 5-year-old was sitting there next to me, and it's got a lot of this flavor text on what's going on. So as you explore, you can read everything that's happening. You enter a new cavern or a new room, and you read this flavor text. And it was really entertaining for him to sit there and watch and help me make decisions and things like that. And so it was a lot of fun. I've yet to beat it. I'd like to beat it, and I'd like to have a more climactic ending.
So it doesn't give you that final girl type climactic.
No, right,
ending.
exactly. If I were to compare the two, Final Girl, almost every single time I've played it, Final Girl has always ended in this like really epic conclusion. Whether or not I win or lose, it's usually this epic experience of something cool happened. This just kind of didn't have that.
Yeah, I love games where when you play them and you lose and you still have an amazing time because you lost so epically.
Yes.
Right.
Those are my style of games. A lot of those games are cooperative, and it sounds like, there's some solo ones as well that achieve that. Maybe not so much this one.
Yeah, this one was good. I liked it though, but it's just not. It doesn't have that epic conclusion that some of these other ones do. I mean, so this game it's called Unbroken, published by Golden Bell Studios and Altima Games, but it doesn't have that epic conclusion. I think some of the games that we like best in this vein do that really well, and I think one of those is the game that we're going to talk about today, our feature review, Cthulhu Death May Die.
Absolutely.
So let's head over into that main review now, and before we do, let's listen to a little rules overview from Kevin.
Cthulhu Death May Die was designed by Eric Lang and Rob Davio and produced by Cool Mini or Not. The cultists have been painstakingly preparing for this moment for quite some time. An elder god, a being adrift in a different dimension, has reached out into their minds, giving them the knowledge necessary to awaken it and bring it into our own world, unleashing its hellish powers on the unsuspecting populace. Too late did the investigators find out about it. The final ritual has begun, but with a little luck, the god might just be vulnerable for a moment after being summoned. That's when they can shoot it in the face. Cthulhu Death May Die puts players in charge of investigators looking to defeat an elder god that is being summoned to Earth. They are running late, as the summoning ritual is already underway. But if they can collect enough clues to find a weakness, or alter the ritual just enough to cause one, they can blast the god to death before it gets a foothold. Working together, players will fight cultists, search for answers, and try to keep their already broken minds from warping even further. To play Cthulhu Death May Die, players will select an episode box and an Elder One box and will combine their components. The episode will provide the map layout, the ritual you are trying to disrupt, and how to disrupt it, as well as the abilities of the monsters in the game. The Elder One will provide the big boss you will fight, with its own challenges, along with its special minion. 1 to 5 players will control investigators, cooperating to win or lose the game together. In each game, the goal remains the same: disrupt the ritual, then kill the Elder One. The episode you select will tell you which tiles you will use to create the map, where to place tokens, and where the monsters and investigators will go to start the game. Each Elder One comes with its own flavor of cultists and monsters, its own mythos cards to mess with you, and Elder One cards in different stages that will unfold as the game goes on. The storyboard used in every game is the hub of information. It contains the summoning track that shows the progression of the Elder One as it manifests itself into our world. If at any time the Elder One progresses to the red space of the summoning track, it will be summoned. It will also be summoned if the ritual is disrupted. If the Elder One advances to the end of the track, the investigators immediately lose. The storyboard will also show the Elder One stage cards, the episode card, and its monsters, as well as the Elder One minions. Each episode also has discovery cards. These include items, companions, and conditions that can help or hinder you. Mythos cards drive the horrors of each game. You will grow to hate them. Half of the Mythos cards in the game come from the episode box, and the other half come from the Elder One box. Each turn, after taking their actions, the active player will draw a Mythos card. Some will move and or summon enemies, others will drive you mad. Most Mythos cards have an Elder One summoning symbol on them. When there are 3 summoning symbols, the Elder One will advance along the summoning track. Each investigator has a board with a wound track, a stress track, a sanity track, and 3 skills. Stress can be used to reroll dice. The wound track marks how much health your investigator has, and your skills will allow you to bend the rules in your favor. Whenever you lose sanity, the marker on your sanity track advances to the right. If it reaches the skull at the end, you are consumed by madness. The sanity track has certain thresholds. When one of these is reached, you will activate your insanity and will level up one of your skills. Each investigator gets an insanity card at the beginning of the game. When your insanity is activated, you do what the card says. Some things may be good, but most are bad. A turn is played out in 4 steps. The first step is the action step. On your turn, you may take up to 3 actions. The first action is run. This allows you to move up to 3 spaces. If you are leaving a space with enemies, all enemies must follow you. Also, if there is fire in your space, you will set yourself on fire and will possibly take damage at the end of your turn. The second action is attack. You may attack any one enemy in your space. Any exclamation points rolled are hits, and any tentacles rolled will move your sanity marker 1 space to the right. If hits meet or exceed the target's health, they are removed from the board. Rest is the third action you can take. If you are in a space with no enemies, you can rest. When you rest, you move 3 spaces to the left on either the stress or wound track. Movement can be split up between the 2 tracks if you would like. The last action you can do is trade. Any items or companions can be traded between investigators in the same space. The second step of the turn is drawing a Mythos card. Mythos cards will summon enemies, advance the Elder One, and do various other terrible things. The third step is investigate or fight. If you are in a safe space with no enemies, an investigator can draw the top card of the discovery deck and take any items, companions, or conditions drawn. If the investigator is not in a safe space, all monsters in the space will attack. Attack dice are shown on the enemy's reference card. Any exclamation points do damage, and all tentacles will move the investigator along the sanity track. Resolving end of turn is the last thing you do on your turn. Resolving end of turn includes any end of turn effects, rolling for fire, checking the Mythos discard pile to see if the Elder One advances, checking to see if the Elder One was summoned, and resolving any Elder One end of turn effects. Players continue playing until the end of the game is triggered. You all win the game if you kill the Elder One by defeating its final stage. You all lose the game if an investigator is killed or consumed by madness before the Elder One is summoned. All investigators are killed or consumed by madness after the Elder One is summoned, or the progression token reaches the last space on the summoning track. So that's how you play. Let's get back to the table to see what we thought of Cthulhu Death May Die.
Thanks, Kevin, for the rules overview of Cthulhu Death May Die, our feature review this episode. So let's talk a little bit about the production of this game and what are the things about this production that we like. Tyler, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you like about the production?
This is published by Cool Mini or not. And the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of production quality is the miniatures in this game. They are amazing, from the cultists to the monsters to the characters, Cthulhu, Dagon, some of the expanded miniatures, the Star Spawn. I mean, that guy is freaking awesome, right? Just cool Cthulhu tentacles, and
they're legitimately terrifying.
Yeah,
right. They did a really good job with the minis.
The detail on each one is just fantastic, and I mean, this is CMON, come on, at its finest, right? Like, this is the quintessential miniature experience.
Yeah, these might be Other than Ankh, these are probably my second favorite miniatures by CMON.
Could be my number one. I mean, I love the Ankh minis. It's close. I'd have to think about that a little more, but I just love the sculpts.
Yeah, they're amazing. And the one thing with the miniatures though is so in this game, you know, the tile spaces are rather small, and there are times where you may have anywhere from 3 to 20 other miniatures in your space. So there's some spacing issues there.
Which I think that's hilarious.
It is hilarious.
I do not see that as a negative at all in my book, because it's literally like a 2x2 or maybe a 3x3 square.
Right.
And you've got Cthulhu there. You've got like a Bayaki or whatever they're called, and 10 cultists.
Fire vampire.
Fire vampire, like all in that square. It's like, there's no way. You're stacking them on top of each other. They're overflowing. I think it's funny. I don't think that's a negative in my book.
I can't imagine what it would be like to have the Cthulhu statue, essentially, if you had that version of it, and then all the minis on it. Like, that thing doesn't even fit on a single space, but even the smaller miniatures can be very large and take up a lot of space. But I agree, Kevin. I don't know that I think it's a negative, because they do a pretty decent job of spacing it out so that even if you start to overflow, there's room on the table itself where you can usually say, okay, that's with this.
Usually, yeah.
The one thing that I would say would be nice is and this is just, I mean, I could make something like this for myself if I wanted, but I was thinking that it would be it would be helpful sometimes to have like an arrow that says all of these minis go to this space, because sometimes I felt like there were a couple of times where it was a little bit overflowy and I wasn't sure if it was on one space or another, but that was not all the often.
And sometimes like the damage tokens, it's like, oh, which one is that go to? But one thing you can do, if there's only one of that type of monster or figure, you can put the damage tokens on their player card.
Yeah. Or we usually put it on the great one instead of stacking it on, right below Cthulhu or Hastur or whoever.
Right.
But yeah, so there's ways around it. But if you've got 5 or 6 cultists in one spot, I mean, you can't put it on the card necessarily. And the damage tokens can be slightly problematic, especially if you're running through a section and you're pulling them with you. Then one falls off. You're like, oh, wait a minute. Who did that belong to?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and we've had that happen.
Yeah, we did.
It reminded me of one of the games that we played the other day. We were playing the scenario where you kill the cultists and their bodies stay on the board so that you can search them for things.
Loot their bodies.
Yes,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And at one point, I was playing the nun character, Sister Beth, I think, and she's in this room with her hands like up.
She's got a pistol in one hand. And is it a
knife or something?
A knife in the other hand. Yeah.
And she's got her arms up, and there's like 10. There was seriously at one point like 9 or 10 cultists laying at her feet, and it was a perfect picture. It was awesome. I don't know, really cool. I love the miniatures. They just add to the experience and the theme of the game so well.
Yeah, and the art in general, I think, is done really well.
Yep.
On the investigators, if you look at the detail on the tiles, it's very thematic, really well done. Everything's kind of got a dark, gritty feel to it that really fits with the Lovecraftian theme. I just think I love everything about the art in this game. I think it really adds to the experience.
And so I've read a little bit of Lovecraft. So essentially, for those who may not be familiar with who Lovecraft is, he was basically an author. I think he was in the 1920s that was underappreciated at the time, and nobody really cared for his works. And then it wasn't until after his death that his works became a lot more popular, and I think they're in the public domain now, and so like they get a lot more use because they're this kind of gothic horror type of vibe with creatures that are really kind of gruesome and terrifying looking, and all of the Lovecraft stories basically have some sort of focus on madness and characters kind of going mad, and you have that insanity element and what is real and what isn't real. And so a lot of this are like really terrifying imagery in a lot of these stories. And I loved CMON's take on what some of these people or creatures look like Dagon and the Deep One servants and things like that, which I had read the Innsmouth, I can't even remember what it's called, but one of the ones I had read was that story. And so it was nice to like have that visualization of similar things to what I had seen in my head. And it was fun to see that take on it. And those components really, I think, tie in that theme and pull you in a way that, like, if you just had cards or art or something else, like little standees, you wouldn't get that same type of horror kind of feel that I think these really lend itself to.
It adds to the epic experience of the game when you actually see physical minis as opposed to standees or cards, like you said. It really, to me, it adds to the experience for sure.
Yeah. And I think the one thing, and you guys had already mentioned this a little bit, but the tokens, the damage tokens, I do wish there was a better way to track those overall, because I mean, other games of this style have different like trackers or counters or ways to monitor those, and that was the only and that's a real nitpick, because I mean it works for the most part. There's just an occasional time where you would drop it, and
there's so many figures that could be on the board at any one time. I think that would be hard to do.
I don't know of a better way to do it, but I also feel like because there's so many minis on the board at a time, it's easier for you to lose track of things, because just using a token and those bases to those minis aren't always big enough to kind of put it directly on the mini base. So it's not like unless you're standing on the tokens and they're all cockeyed and scawampus, like that takes away from it for me. But again, that's a nitpick. That's like, it's a very minor thing to me.
I don't have really anything negative at all to say about the production.
I don't either.
So I think that is a good overview of the production and what we really like about it. Let's talk about the gameplay itself and what do we enjoy about the gameplay. Kevin, why don't you tell us a little bit of your thoughts on Cthulhu Death May Die?
So the first thing that comes to mind is this game, more than any other game I've played, creates cinematic moments and epic moments. Whenever I've won this game, and this game is very difficult, it can just beat you up and you can lose quickly. But when we've disrupted the ritual and when we've defeated the Elder One, it almost always comes down to this epic conclusion, and we barely squeak out a win by the skin of our teeth. And it's one of those stand-up moments around the table where somebody's rolling and they have to roll a success or else we lose, or something crazy happens where we just barely squeak out a win. And it's just this epic cinematic moment where you can kind of see it in your mind, and it's just awesome.
Yeah.
That's happened time and time again. We've played this obviously for this podcast recently quite a few times. And, 3 of the 4 games that I played have come down to the end where you think there is not a chance in the world you're going to be able to figure this out, but you end up figuring it out in the end and you win. I love that about this game.
One of the games that we played, it felt like we were going to lose early on, almost at every turn, right? The whole game. And then it came down to this moment where everybody was killed off except for Tyson. And he finished off, was the Black Goat of the Woods.
Yep.
And it was just like, I mean, we cheered and we were high-fiving. Yep. And I had a similar experience last night playing the 6th episode with my family. We had never beat that one. We played it. My wife had this incredible role where she had one of the characters where the abilities did double damage on successful rolls. And she rolled and she finished off the 3rd stage of Cthulhu in one roll, and it was amazing. And she was 1 turn away from going mad, because Cthulhu at the end of his turns in the later stages, your insanity increases at the end of every turn, right? And it just creates this feeling of impending doom that's coming, and I don't know, it was just incredible. My son, my wife, and I, we high-fiving, yelling. You know, it was just awesome.
It straddles this line of making you feel like completely powerless, while at the same time moments where you feel absolutely powerful, right? Like where there are moments in the very same game where you're like completely doomed. There's no hope whatsoever, and you're sitting there thinking, I have no chance. And then you pull something off where it's like, I just cleared a room of 10 different enemies and they all just died because I pulled off this really good experience. And I think part of the reason for that, for me, that it's so good is the dice. I'm not a huge fan of dice in most games. I think they can be done really well, but I think that this game in particularly does dice the way that I love it most. It creates those stand-up moments where everybody is excited to see the outcome and the rolls, and there's enough mitigation in the die rolling and ways to buff yourself and increase it that it creates these opportunities for you to feel like, even though there's this random chance, you have enough control over it to make it really effective and powerful. And part of that to me is really tied into the theme of it, where the more crazy, the more mad that you become in this game, the more powerful you also become. And it's this, again, this straddling a line of, do I want to increase my potential for madness and ultimately death? Or do I want to make sure that I'm holding back at the right time so that I can get the buffs and the things that I'm doing that create opportunities for me to do really cool things?
Yeah, we actually talked about that last night as a family. That's one of our favorite parts of the game, is becoming mad. And there's this balance of, you know, getting super powerful, but then you're risking ending your game and being out for the rest of the game. But it is so awesome, and it's so much fun when you get those extra dice and the abilities. You know, some games when you go up on ability tracks, it's like there's a clear pick. I feel like in Cthulhu Death May Die, like the abilities that you get to choose from for your characters,
It's a tough decision.
yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They're all amazing. Becoming super powerful, but not doing it too quickly. I love that part of this game.
That balance is awesome. Yeah. And to be successful in this game, you talked about the special abilities. You have to really use your special abilities well. And you have to be thoughtful about what other people's special abilities are and how they can complement each other. Right. And you could die super easy, but if you are successful, you're really using your special abilities to the best that you can. And to kind of piggyback off what you said about the dice, there's no better feeling than rolling a wheelbarrow full of dice, right? Yes. like just a huge amount when you don't even have enough dice and you got to re-roll dice because you have so many. And I love the difference between the black dice and the green dice. Yeah. Right. That little distinction there where you can't go mad from the green dice. It just adds a little bit of a different flavor to the game.
So yeah, it pairs so perfectly, the dice mechanic with those insanity cards, that like it creates really awesome experiences. I love, again, that fine line between how madness creates opportunities for you. One game I had an insanity card that gave me, I was prone to psychotic outbreaks, which essentially just meant that like if I reached a madness threshold, I would end up like just attacking everybody around me, whether
including
or not they're
investigators.
Whether or not they're allies or not, I could attack everybody around me and just do damage. And so you can set yourself up in a way that you're like, all right, I'm probably going to roll a madness this turn, so you all need to stay clear of me, and I need to run into a room of a lot of people so that I can do crazy damage and just do some crazy things.
And using those insanity cards to your benefit is just such a fun puzzle. Some of them you can't do amazing things with, but some of them you can really make an impact on where the game's going and wipe out a bunch of guys. Like, I don't know. They're hilarious. Well, how they're implemented and I don't know.
The art on them is great. Yeah. Like I had the fear of crowds 2 games in a row, which was just hilarious because I wanted to be alone, right? So I was trying to get away from everybody, including monsters and cultists and everything and other investigators, because if I was by myself, then I could heal all of my stress. I was less stressed because I wasn't around crowds.
Right.
And it's super thematic, right?
Yeah.
And if I have more stress, it gives me more chances to re-roll, and it's super beneficial. So that puzzle, like you mentioned, of trying to get somewhere by myself was fun to try to figure out.
Well, and on the flip side of that, in that same game, I had codependency where I had to pick another investigator at the start of the game. And when I hit that madness threshold, if I wasn't with that person, then I would lose stress. And if I was, then I would gain stress back or something. So it was like, okay, I can't pick Kevin because he wants to be away from everybody. I need to pick somebody else, but I couldn't pick
because I had psychotic outbreaks.
You had psychotic outbreaks, so I didn't want. But it was also kind of it was a little funny because it was like, okay, but while that person is alive still, well, if they're dead, wouldn't I be even more stressed,
more sad about it? But nope, it went away.
Which, whatever, it might be a little thematic miss there, but those make the game so much fun.
Yeah,
it creates a puzzle. You were talking about how they all can't like be used in powerful ways necessarily all the time, but every single one of those that I've seen at least feel like there is a puzzle to be had there of how do I maximize this negative condition. It's a bad thing. There's no question that ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a condition that you have to navigate your gameplay around. And how do I do that effectively to minimize the potential harm while maximizing any potential opportunities it creates? And I do think that those always have some method by which, if you're reading them, you're like, oh, I can do something. Like I had a pyro one, another game, and it was...
Yeah, you burn it.
I burned
us all.
Everybody alive.
We lost that game.
And it was not great.
Because you're lighting fires everywhere.
But there were ways, like if you're playing a scenario where there's a lot of fire, and I could totally see opportunities to make that super powerful, and that could be really interesting to play it that way.
Oh, totally.
And so I love the combination. I think that's my favorite part about the game is the combination between the dice mechanic and the insanity cards and how to maximize those experiences within the game.
One of my favorite ones is the catatonia or whatever. So you become catatonic.
Yeah, Mark had that. Right?
Yeah. And you're just sitting in your wheelchair, and when you go insane, you're apparently you're invisible to everybody because you can't be attacked until you rest. The stories and how we joke around about those cards is just hilarious.
Well, and it was particularly hilarious in the game that we recently played with that card, and Mark had it, and you have to basically topple your figure, your mini, over, showing that it's down. And that was the same game that Tyler was talking about. Sister Beth in the room full of bodies, and one of those bodies happened to be Mark, and it just felt like, oh well.
He's taking a nap with the cultists.
Hide amongst the dead, and we'll be safe. So it was really a fun thematic tie into everything, I think.
So something that I really love is the variability in setup in this game. There are only 6 episodes in season 1 or the base game. However, you got your choice of 6 different episodes that you can play that have different ways to disrupt the rituals, right? You can play with different elder ones. So in the base game, I think it's...
You have Hastur and Cthulhu.
Hastur and Cthulhu. Season 2 has...
I don't know if there's any more elder ones in season 2, but
you can buy... Box. There's the Unspeakable box, which was the Kickstarter exclusive. That had some extra elder ones. And then also you could buy some standalone elder ones. So you pick a different scenario. You can pick a different elder one. You have a different insanity card. You have different character. You can play the same scenario with a complete different setup. Everybody playing with a different character, and it's still a blast.
Super modular.
Well, and the episodes are just vastly different. What you're trying to do and accomplish, it changes the way you play the game. And it's just that adds to the variability of it.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Well, and not only the elder ones, their abilities, they come with different monsters. They have their own deck of 8 mythos cards. So you take 8 mythos cards from whatever scenario picked, and 8 Mythos cards from the Elder one, and you mix them together, and that's your Mythos deck. So it's different
every time. And
how those cards are coming out is different every time. I mean, you could summon a Star Spawn repeatedly, or you could not summon the Star Spawn the whole game based on how it comes out, you know? It's just, then it adds to the variability of it.
Well, and then each mission itself has different modular aspects about it that are at different environmental conditions. You could have a mission that has tons of fire, or you could have a mission that has tons of creatures and things coming at you.
Or you have to go hide in a sarcophagus and rest or something, you know?
Yeah, you have to go and blow up labs, or you have to go and do a bunch of other
moon
things.
Phases, and you have to move the mirrors to change what phase of the moon's visible.
Tomes you have to collect to disrupt the ritual. There's just all kinds of stuff.
Which essentially means that it doesn't get stale. Like, you can play this game in many different ways, and it really doesn't get stale.
Yeah, which is surprising because, again, there's only 6 different scenarios in the base game.
Yeah, I'm not sick of it yet.
No, it just keeps getting better, I feel like. Another thing I like about this game is that if you are playing in a group where 1 or 2 people have played before, it's fairly easy to introduce someone to the game and teach them really quick what they need to know. And I think this kind of goes with par for the course with a lot of cooperative games. You can kind of teach them over the course of the first and second rounds of the game, really give them the base, what they need to know, and then you just start playing, and it's pretty easy to jump into.
No, that is a huge boon for it, I think. And it, because how many games do we sit here and play, add one new player to the table, and it takes an hour to explain it, but everybody else is already familiar with the game and so kind of checked out. This doesn't have that. It takes maybe 15 minutes to give
the basics,
in-depth kind of, yeah.
Well, and
go into them a little bit, but just enough that they need to know to get started, right?
I have so many expansions that I never play because I'm always teaching the game to somebody new, right?
Yep.
That's not the case for this one, right? You can throw in an expansion. It's just more of a good thing.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So you can throw in whatever you want.
Which is
more
awesome.
Investigators, more, elder gods or great ones or whatever,
Which makes it awesome if you've played the game a lot, because it doesn't matter. You can continue, even if you're playing the base game over and over and over again, it's going to be different. You can still get different experiences every time, no matter who's at the table. And I think that's great.
Yeah. One other thing I just thought of is I'm not a huge solo game player. I do every once in a while. This is one of those games that I had a blast playing solo. It was I played it a few times, and each time there was a big epic conclusion, and it was, it would have been more fun to have other people there to experience it with me, but I had a blast by myself playing it.
That's awesome.
It's a good solo experience.
Well, and you say that I play more solo games than you probably, Kevin, but you probably play more cooperative games than me. And this as a cooperative game is, I think, a delightful experience even if you aren't like super invested in cooperative games, because of the way that your characters work, because as you guys have already mentioned, you have the ability to upgrade your character, and that choice is always interesting because each one is like, well, do I upgrade this or that? And then how does my insanity card take into play? How does the condition of the scenario take into play? How can I feed off of somebody else's ability? There is a lot of decisions to make individually within the cooperative team that it can be made. There was one experience that we had where the plan had been for me to follow Mark into an area because I needed to loot some bodies to get some of the knowledge tokens or forbidden tomes or whatever they were called to proceed the storyline. But it ended up happening that enough had happened between my turn or Mark's turn and my turn that decision seemed less important to me anymore. And I ultimately made the decision, Mark, I don't think that this is the most advantageous decision for us at this time. And I'm going to go back and choose something other than what we had previously decided. And for me in a cooperative game, that is a big deal because it doesn't mean that I have to continue along a prescribed, designated condition or plan that we had come up with, I can go ahead and make decisions that are relevant to me on my turn that I can individually make. Collaboration is key too, because it takes that many people sometimes to kind of see things that you wouldn't have otherwise seen and be like, oh yeah, that is something to consider that I hadn't considered. And it does add to that decision-making process that I really did enjoy a lot of the times when as a group we were discussing something. It didn't feel like one person was just saying, this is the way to do it. Everybody was contributing to the discussion, and it created a collaborative and team building kind of experience.
Yeah, and I feel like you figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's through that collaboration. It's like you feel this overwhelming sense of there's no way we're going to be able to do this. But then as you're talking together, you're like, oh, okay, I could, and this is one of the mechanics that I love, I could run here and I could take everybody with me.
Yep.
And then that frees you up that you can go do this. And then you have the marksman ability and you can stand in an adjacent room and shoot this person and not be attacked afterwards. That whole process and that discussion and figuring it out, it makes you feel like you've actually done something, right? Yeah. And you feel like a sense of accomplishment that as a group, you figured out how to, solve this puzzle and hopefully, win the game.
And you feel clever.
You do.
I mean, you feel like
you're gaming the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that reminds me, I've talked about it before, but one of our very first plays as a family, Logan made this sacrificial move where he took this massive horde of cultists and monsters out of our path, and we were able to finish it. But he sacrificed himself. None of us we hadn't played it a lot, so we hadn't really figured that out. And it was just so clever and amazing, that choice. And it was just like, dude, that was brilliant.
Well
done.
Yeah.
And he was like 11 or 12 at the time. And it was just this amazing move. And Mark did it the other night.
Yep.
He was
going to die for sure.
He was going to die for sure. And I was like, all right, well, let's
make this
take
worth
all
it.
the guys I can take with me. And
And he took seriously 10, 15 guys with him into as far away as possible as it could go. And it made his death seem like very cinematic, very climactic, very
and it made his
meaningful.
Death meaningful,
Yes,
right? For a board game to have a meaningful death like that, you're like, well, that's cool.
But I also love if you die in this game and you are no longer taking a turn, you're still in the collaborative thought and discussion at the table, trying to decide what the best course of action is.
Yeah, it's got player elimination, and that's usually looked at on as a bad thing. But you're engaged, right? And you're invested in that story, even if you're dead, because even though you're dead, you still win, right?
Yeah.
Well, and exactly that. Like we talked just barely about the collaboration and how important that is, and how it feels like you're actually collaborating together, and everybody's opinion is worthwhile. So even if you're dead, you still get that experience regardless, and it creates an awesome opportunity for you to stay absolutely engaged.
I close my eyes as Sister Beth, and I look down and I see my nun outfit, and there's Rasputin across the room from me,
flaming
and
hand.
Sister Lizzie Borden with her axe, and
Adam with his shotgun or whatever.
The characters are hilarious and awesome. But in this situation, if it happened in real life, the collaboration would happen just like it happens at the table playing the game, I think.
There's so many funny things that happen in this game throughout the course of a game. I played one time, and the character doesn't have a hand. Right.
Yeah.
And like and if you're in a safe space in the game, you get to draw a card, and you maybe get a companion, a golden retriever, or you maybe get like a pistol or a shotgun. So this character, I forget what his name is, he had a shotgun and a pistol, and he had one arm. So like we were just joking around about that. It's like, how do you shoot both at the same time? I don't understand. Right. And there's stuff like that happens throughout every game that we play, and everybody's laughing and having a good time.
And going back to even when you lose, it's like, when can we play again?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. It's not it doesn't feel bad to lose.
Right.
This is one of those games that, regardless of the length of the play, you're excited to play that next game, that next scenario that like you can play multiple times in a night and not feel like it's dragging on at all. It's exciting to play, and you're like, could we get one more game in? Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we finished one of the episodes, and I asked, and Mark was like instantaneous. Yes, you know, like let's do it.
Are there negative things that we want to discuss on this one?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot. And I think any negative that I'm going to bring up is just nitpicking. But maybe there's some things to be aware of, right? People coming into the game. Setup time is pretty extensive for some of these scenarios. It takes a little bit of time to get it set up.
Well, and if you're familiar with CMON, like that's the experience with any CMON game, essentially.
I do like on the back of the scenario card, it has the tiles laid out and where I feel like that's done really well.
They make it super easy to set it up.
Right. Where the cultists go and where the monsters start out. And
right. But I mean, but it can be a little bit of a lengthy setup. That doesn't bother me at all because it's kind of an enjoyable experience for me, right? Because I'm getting stuff out of all the boxes and I'm looking at the minis again going, yeah, these are awesome, you know? And I don't mind that, but maybe it's something to be aware of. Yeah. If you don't like to, big setups in games, that may bother you a little bit.
But I would even say that like you were saying, Tyler, that card and it, even if you're setting this up on the fly, like, you didn't preset it up for game night and everybody's there and gathered, it's really easy with that card to be like, okay, here's what needs to be set up. You guys go set up this.
You take down the last episode and we'll set up the next episode.
It goes
pretty quick.
Again, it's collaborative in that effort, and you can designate how things get cleaned up, and everything has its place. So like, yeah, I would agree, something to be aware of, Kevin, but I don't know that like, honestly, that's not that big of a thing.
So I was obviously stretching for that one.
Yes, he was.
I have one thought that is, again, not negative, but more of a be aware of. Not every scenario is created equal. And we already said why that's a good thing, but there are things like one of the scenarios we did where you're trying to get the tomes had a little bit more randomness to it. Because effectively what you were trying to do in gathering the forbidden knowledge and then go into the tomes is you're waiting to discover. So the objective in that game was you're trying to go kill cultists, then look at what is on their body by drawing a random token from a pile, and that token corresponds with a tome that is on the map, a symbol on that tome, and you have to have 2 of those tokens to be able to collect that tome. So with that scenario, for me, it felt a little bit at times like, well, we're just waiting to get the right stuff. We're playing optimally. We're doing really well, but it's
I don't know that we played that
randomness.
game optimally.
I don't, but like, even
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Even if you were playing optimally, there was a little bit more randomness in that than I'd like. I had less control, but that wasn't a bad thing because it's a different experience, and like, it's just something to be aware of.
And it's part of the puzzle that you've got to figure out, and it promotes more trading, which may not be as prevalent in other scenarios.
Right, which is one of the actions available to you, right?
Yep, right.
One thing that I do love about failing a scenario, though, is then you pick your characters. After you've experienced it once, you can then go back for your next game of that scenario and pick the characters that have the skills that you think are going to be tailored
More
to
efficient,
helping you finish that scenario. And I love that.
It's interesting you say that, because that's a comment I made about the Lord of the Rings LCG that we talked about
a couple
episodes ago. It's like you lose a scenario horribly, and then you have the opportunity to rebuild your deck because you know what you're going to face. And then you can win that scenario. And when you do that successfully, you're like, oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And it's the same type of thing in this game where you can go, these are the abilities that I need based on what I know is coming. And then you can win the scenario.
Well, and then there's other games where when you have to replay a scenario, it's like, ugh.
Yeah, I'm thinking like Gloomhaven.
What? Do we have to play this again?
Yeah. Right.
And this game it's a blast. I love replaying scenarios after we fail, changing things up a little bit. and then trying to do it all over again and be successful,
Well, and there's we're going back to things we like, but
Yeah.
I also like that with that I can play the same character and get a lot of learn the nuances of that character and play it really well and play that time and time again and not get tired of that character. But then I can switch to another character as well and I have a similar but different experience with the same type of scenario. The game's ability to be very replayable and variable is off the charts.
And there's two abilities that could be the same as some other people. So that makes it a little bit easier to get into another character because maybe you've seen Arcane Mastery before. Or Brawling before. But then there's a unique ability that's only for that one character, which is cool. That makes you feel kind of unique and special. You're doing your own thing. You have your own ability, which is awesome. I love that. I love when games do that.
So is there anything else negative or in the vein of negative that we want to talk about?
My only negative thing I can think about is kind of outside of the actual gameplay itself is that this game is not readily available. And even though I have season 2 and I haven't played it yet and I have the Unspeakable box, I want more content.
Season 3. Come on.
Season 3. Yeah, let's do it. Come on, Rob Davio and Eric Lang. Let's do this. I know that Eric Lang's parted ways with CMON, but
make a way to make it happen. Okay?
But the foundation and the gameplay is there that they could just come up with some new scenarios, add a new Elder 1 or 2, and
I think it'd be a wildly successful Kickstarter.
It would, and this game is hard to find. I bought the Unspeakable box. I didn't back the Kickstarter. Again, this is another game that Kevin introduced me to. I bought the Unspeakable box for my son on eBay. I paid top dollar for it. It's got some incredible content in it with different characters and more scenarios. But yeah, let's bring this back, put it back in print. Let's get it going again, and let's get some additional content.
This is not a real negative there, but yeah.
No. Yeah. Well, and there's games that we review that we just have nothing but positive things to say about, and then there's games that are not like that.
So then let's wrap it up with our final thoughts on this game. So how we do our final thoughts is we rate the game on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being a terrible game and 5 being it's an amazing game. Why don't we start with Tyler? Why don't you start us off with what your final thoughts on this game are?
So I'm just going to be brief. I love everything about this game. I love everything that's been said about this game tonight. I've enjoyed every play of this game. My family just finished the last scenario in season 1. I'm excited to move on to season 2. I've got 15 plays total, and that's with varying groups playing varying different scenarios. And every single play has been a blast, even the ones that we got obliterated in. And, this is a top 5 game for me. It's a 5, obviously, for me, 5 out of 5. And I don't have anything negative to say about this game really at all.
So I want to go next then. I want to follow that up because, as has been said on this podcast multiple times, cooperative is not always the games that I'm drawn to. And I don't always love Cthulhu games. I like Cthulhu. I like the background and everything. But I would say that this game is probably as close to I can get of a perfect cooperative game that I can think out there that I would love to play anytime, because essentially I could see myself playing this solo. I could see myself playing this with group. The ability to get basically anybody into this game really quickly and teach it means that it's great. Spirit Island. I love Spirit Island, but that game is way more complex than you can't just jump somebody right into that game. And I think it does a great job at being a good cooperative game. But it's for the right crowd. This game, I think you could play with a lot of basically new people who have not been familiar with tons of games. I feel like there's a lot of theme in it that gets people excited. People feel individual. I like this game so much that even though both of you own this one, if an opportunity comes up for me to get this, I would get this game. And because again, I can play it solo or I can play it with random groups of whomever. So like I'm interested to see if I can find a copy of this one. For me, this is a 5. I think that I'll come back to this game over and over and over again.
I know what it's going to be for Kevin.
High praise from the cooperative hater. Yeah.
Hater is a strong word.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's awesome. All right, my turn.
Yep.
5 next.
Yeah.
We've already, I think, explained how we feel about the game. I mean, it's just an amazing game. It's an amazing game, amazing experience every time I play. For all of the reasons that we've talked about, I would happily play it anytime, and play it over and over again. I don't see myself getting tired of this game anytime soon. It is a 5 for sure. So top end of the 5. If there is a variation in the 5 scale.
Right, I agree with that. We reviewed Journeys to Middle Earth, Lord of the Rings, Journeys to Middle Earth a couple episodes ago. As far as excitement goes, this game is everything that game is not. And the whole time that we were playing that game, I kept thinking, man, and I know Kevin made this comment too, I wish we were playing Cthulhu Death May Die right now, because it does not hold a candle. Journeys does not hold a candle to Death May Die at all. I mean, it doesn't even come close.
Well, how cool would it be
I was thinking
to have either a legacy version or a campaign version of Cthulhu Death May Die? Talk about a new Kickstarter, right? Introduce that, right?
Last episode we came up with movie ideas.
Yeah.
Now this is
something
brilliant.
that carries over from episode to episode, like in a cohesive story.
Oh yeah, it'd be
That would be so cool.
You could use this system.
Missed opportunity.
And then
haven't done it already.
Put a bunch of different themes on it too. Like you could use this system effectively.
Oh yeah.
And you could do the Lord of the Rings
with
this.
it.
Like,
You could.
This is
Lord
what
of the
I
Rings
wanted
game.
the Lord of the Rings experience to be. This could be a great experience for that. And you put that campaign legacy element to it, and it would create really great things. I think that you could do a lot of great stuff with it. And you would want different versions of this because of how variable and different it is. So I think
we like it.
Regardless, this is a great game, and it's unlike the sweep of Lord of the Rings of 2. This is a sweep of a 5 from all of us on this Cthulhu Death May Die.
Go play it.
So I think that wraps up our review of Cthulhu Death May Die. I think it goes without saying, but if you get an opportunity to try this one, check it out. And if you like Cthulhu games and you think there's a better one out there, I'd love to hear what your thoughts on Arkham games or Arkham horror style Cthulhu games are. Tell us on the Discord whether or not you think this is the best Cthulhu game, or if you'd like to try this one.
I will say we were getting ready to review this, and I found on Audible the complete fiction of H.P. Lovecraft, and I've started listening to it. And this is produced by the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society, which that's awesome, right? Been listening to it. My favorite story so far is The Mountain of Madness, and it's really cool. I'm excited to listen to all of it. There's
some that aren't so great.
Right, but. So I'm intrigued, and I know that this is something that my wife will love. Yeah. And it's perfect for this time of year as we're getting into the Halloween season. So I'm excited. I'm even more excited now. I've never played Arkham Horror, and playing this and talking about it makes me want to go play Arkham Horror.
Like the card game?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I've gotten into the new release, and I have a few of the cycles.
Awesome.
And I've only played the first one. It was awesome.
Same.
And I'm excited to go play through a lot more. So.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Longest Turn Board Gaming Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you want more Longest Turn in your life, please check us out on Instagram. Also, be sure to check us out on Board Game Geek, where you can join our guild, Guild 3947, and check out our blog, where we post all our show notes and occasionally post more detailed reviews. If that's not enough for you, we have a Discord server. If you want to play a game with us on Board Game Arena, join our Board Game Arena group, The Longest Turn. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Tot ziens.
Goodbye.
See you later.
So they could actually play a full game or just a round of Ubongo?
Yeah, all the pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over the top.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
If you guys
Okay, that's a
feel
little
like it.
understated.
Yeah. Okay. I guess.
So yeah, that was Monsters on Board.
He's still trying to finish. Close it out.
Sorry.
So let's roll over to Kevin with the rules, right?
Thanks, Kevin, for that.
When we start these reviews, we always like to go into our talk about the production of this game, right? And I'm going to backtrack because that was awful.
It was okay.
It was fine.
It would have been good for like episode 1 through 5.
Thanks, Kevin, for the rules overview of Cthulhu Death May Die, our feature review this episode. Let's start by talking about this game a little bit about the... Oh my gosh, that was all sorts of words. Talk about this game about the little bit of the...
Take 3.
Third time's a charm.
You got this.
Thank...
Bye.